Hi everybody, this is grief painting number 3. I'm finding this is helping because it's helping me to focus. So I'm doing one little painting every day until I feel better. So I'm hoping that it will help you too in whatever way that you've suffered in the past. It doesn't have to be to do with loss or death. It could be to do with anything, a loss of a friendship or a pet, or So I've got this little sort of teardrop shape here, and I'm just going to paint from here upwards, radiating outwards. On the left there's going to be the sort of positive, stronger feelings, and on the right is going to be the more negative but equally valid feelings. I'm just going to talk my way through this as I paint. So the initial mark here is represents the loss of a loved one or somebody who's died. May not necessarily be a loved one, and I'm going to paint that in a fairly positive colour, just because I want to remember the loved one in a positive way rather than in a negative way. Death is part of life and we all have to go through it, and there will be, even though I don't feel so much positivity at the moment, there will be some positive results to this process that we all have to go through. So there we are. There's my representation of loss or a loved one. I'm just following some tips and advice that I've read about with regard to each stage. It's nice to have been sort of shown the stages. It's not something that I've talked about. I've tried to talk about death with people, but my family don't really talk about it that much. So I wasn't very well informed. So I've had to do a lot of reading, and I've talked to my sister and my husband about their experiences. So that's helped, or what they're feeling currently anyway. So as we work up to the right hand side here, we're going to go through the levels of grief, and apparently the first one is denial. So I'm going to use a series of colours that are soft. I'd like to describe them as soft rather than colours we like or don't like. I enjoy all colours, and if you follow my YouTube tutorials, you'll see that colours are a very important part of the painting process that we go through. I may have to dry some of these colours off in between because they will bleed, but maybe that'll be a nice thing. So we've got a raw sienna or yellow ochre colour there, and then I'm just going to go through a series of browns. So that one is apparently the first stage of grief is denial. Okay, and then the next one is anger. So we're going to allow these, with rather than drying them off with a hairdryer, which is what I'd normally do when producing a painting, I'm going to allow the colours to bleed into one another slightly, because they obviously do cross over and these things will come and go. So the first one was denial, the second one was anger, the third one is guilt. So you might feel like I have been feeling guilt about the way the person passed away, or guilt about not being there in the final stages. Fortunately, even with COVID, we were allowed to be with my mother at the end, which was absolutely wonderful, and something that I'm trying to sort of hold on to help me to come to terms with this, because it could have been much worse. And I know that a lot of people will be suffering at the moment because they haven't been able to be with their loved ones at the end. So that is a great help to me. So we've got denial, guilt, resentment, and then we're into remorse. So remorse will come to you in different levels. You might feel terrible about something that you've said or something that you've done, if you didn't do things right in your eyes towards the end, or maybe you had to make a decision that you didn't want to make, but you had to make it, you were forced into it. So that could be some remorse. And then we go into grief. So we've got actual grief, which is what I'm going through at the moment, is the physical grief as a result of a death. So lots of crying, lots of dreams. So not just pain, physical pain during the day, but at the night time as well, when you're asleep. And physical pain, actual feeling sore all over, feeling sick, all of those things. So the next one is helplessness. So that is a phase that I think I'm going into at the moment, which is this idea of not being able to do anything about what's happened. So you have to almost give up and let things happen. So I'm trying to control my grief, and I've realised that I'm not able to do that. I've just got to let it happen. So that gives me a feeling of helplessness, as in normally I'm very much in control, and the idea that I have to allow this to happen without being in control is quite difficult for me. Okay, so the next stage is depression. So I found that this stage has been with me throughout all of these earlier stages. So depression is the only thing that I can associate with. I have had deaths in the family before, but not really, really close family members, like as in sisters, fathers, mothers. And that feeling of this sort of depression is the only thing I can link to, because everybody suffered from depression in some form in their life. So it's the only sort of feeling directly that I've had that I understand. So, you know, I've been going through all of these stages and thinking, well, this feels like a depression, a form of depression, which I suppose it is in the end. Your body and your mind just feeling hopeless and helpless and not knowing what to do, not being able to maybe, you know, get up in the morning, not being able to function as you would normally function. And then after that we go into despair. So this is almost the final category of this section, and despair is the stage where you're sort of flinging your hands up in the air and going, I don't know what to do. And, you know, at that stage, I suppose, is when you start reaching out for help. Your body's basically saying, just give it up and allow people to help. Read about what you're going through, learn about what you're going through. And that despair will help you to hopefully reach some conclusions. And then the final extra bit that I'm going to put on in a minute is a layer where you quit fighting. So through this despair, through this depression, helplessness, grief, remorse, resentment, guilt, anger, denial, eventually the final layer would be where you quit fighting. So, you know, you're fighting against all of these elements, trying to either push them on too quickly or trying not to experience them in the first place. And in the end, really, you've just got to give in to it and allow it to happen. You have to go through all of these stages. This is what I've been told by friends and family. And I was aware of all these things, but the reality of it is very different when you're actually going through it yourself. So quit fighting through all of these. So we go over now onto the other side before I put that one in. And we're going to go into the more positive stages. So the things that will help, what will help? So the first one after the loss is faith. Now that doesn't necessarily have to mean religious faith. It just means that you believe that you will come out of this. So it's a belief. And then the next stage is hope. And, you know, all you can do is remind yourself of the fact that there's always hope. Even though you may not believe that. I don't believe that at the moment, but I'm sure that that will come. The next stage is admitting to yourself finally that this situation has happened and that there's nothing we can do about it other than look after ourselves and be kind to ourselves and help each other through it. Then there's remembrance. So remember what's happened. Oops, moving this around a bit. So remember what's happened. You might be pushing it away, which is what I've been doing, is just trying to ignore it. Not in a negative sense away, but because it's been so painful, I've been pushing it away because I don't want to be in pain anymore. You know, it's quite a natural stage, apparently. Okay, let's go this way. So after we remember, the stage is to talk. So talking, I'm finding this quite difficult to talk about it. I'm still not ready really, which is why I'm doing these tutorials, because via this I'm talking to myself. I'm able to talk to myself. I'm not physically able to talk to other people, mainly because I can't look at people's faces and accept that they're trying to help me, or they're trying to give me their condolences, all those sort of things. I'm finding that really difficult at the moment. So talking, I'm still at this stage here where I know that I'm going to have to start sharing and talking, but I'm finding it really difficult. So I'm doing it this way because I don't have to. I'm not looking at anybody. I'm not seeing people's faces, and I'm hoping that that will come in the next few days. Acceptance, right? So this is the total acceptance of the situation. What has happened? Finally, really accepting that the situation has occurred. That if you've lost a person, that they're not coming back, they're not going to be there for you anymore. You've lost a whole pile of love that was there, but you know, it's still there really. But that's really difficult. Okay, next is Serenity. So Serenity is a sort of a representation of some form of peace of mind. So through acceptance, hopefully your mind, I'm wishing this part forward, because my mind's absolutely playing games with me at the moment. It's all over the place. So I'm hoping that that serenity comes when it's ready, but comes soon. And then the next stage is planning. So I assume through the peace of mind, the serenity, that comes a moment of planning and moving via those plans, moving forward and into a calmer, more peaceful time. And then the next stage is action. So obviously through your peace of mind and accepting of the death or the grief or the loss, that will allow you to start making some plans and actually putting those plans into action. So getting back to some form of normality. Oops, wrong blue I put in there. Okay, so those are the stages in this lovely tear shape of grief, loss, whatever you want to remember or reflect on. I wanted to add a couple of extras to this shape, and I'm going to represent them with green, because green is a colour I associate, especially at the moment. It's spring, everything's growing, everything's moving on. So I'm going to represent my two extras. These are things I wanted to add myself. One was just to this side, which is the points of grief, the stages of grief. I wanted to add an extra section which represents the fact that you are quitting the fight. And really, I want to do this more than anything else. I want to just give up fighting, trying to stop controlling my grief and just let it happen. So that represents quitting the fight of all this side. And then over the other side, I'm going to use a different green, and I'm going to put this down, and this will represent a stronger me and somebody who's going to forge ahead when I'm ready, when you're ready, and form a stronger me. Feel very weak at the moment, so again I'm hoping that this will happen relatively soon. Okay, so that's a stronger new path. I called my first grief painting a new path, so I'm hoping that this bit will come soon, and also before this that I will quit fighting, and hopefully by quitting fighting I will go through all of these positive elements and then end up stronger and going on a new and beginning a new path, a different path, one that is without that person that you've lost, or a pet that you've lost, or a friend that you've lost, but they're still there, and hopefully we can remember them through these stages, through faith, hope, remembrance, talking and planning for the future, nurturing yourself, looking after yourself via the remembrance of the person that you've lost. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that, and that'll do for today. I hope it's calmed you down. I've calmed down a little bit, and hopefully I'll be able to do some work now and make some tutorials for my YouTube channel. Okay, bye for now. Have a good day.